What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless Engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so you can stand up and use your voice. But today, we're talking with Sidney Davis Jr. I got to meet Sidney Davis Jr. I don't know. Do you have to say the full thing every single time, or can I just call you Sidney?
Gotta say the full thing. Gotta say, or I'm walking off. I'm walking.
Right. Yeah. So anyways, I met Sidney at NanoCon. I had seen Sidney around a lot, on Talk Heathen and everything. And but I got a chance to meet her, talk to her and everything. And it was just a really great experience meeting you for the first time at NanoCon. And instead of me trying to tell everybody about you, why don't you sort of let everybody know who you are, what you do, and where they can find you and everything?
Hell yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I wanted to show everybody the merch of yours that I stole at NanoCon. Get on my level. Yeah. So do you just want me to just give my little bio, just tell a little bit about myself? Okay. So I actually started in stand-up. I did stand-up comedy for 16 years. But at the same time, I started debate as well. I initially went to college on a debate scholarship. And then ever since then, so for about 15 years now, I've been doing professional debate. And so one of the things that I felt was really important, and one of the reasons I actually pretty much retired from doing stand-up to focus on communication and debate, is I feel like when people like you and I, we're on these platforms with live call-in shows where people call in and we debate with them, and sometimes we get into kind of heated arguments. It was important to me that I also teach people real world, in-person communication style debate skills. That's, in my opinion, that is one of the most important things you can do for yourself, is learn how to communicate and debate in a very realistic, real world way, right? So we're on a lot of platforms where the idea is they set it up for us to debate, but that's not necessarily real life. That's not what you run into with family, at work, with friends, in real world settings. And so I noticed one day you were posting about debate, and I was thinking like, oh, maybe I could talk to your audience a little bit about how to be a better and more effective and more successful debater in real life conversation, as opposed to, we have internet debates, we have Facebook debates, we have comment debates, but what does it look like when you are engaging in debate in real life with real people, and you can't just log off or hang up? Maybe it's people that you have to, keep in your life. Maybe it's your boss at work. Maybe it's a teacher. And so, yeah, so I've kind of pivoted since then from focusing on stand-up and comedy. I have a stand-up special on Amazon. It's called Trash. But now I focus more on really I don't want to say pushing, but on really supporting, atheist content, agnostic content, and debate content, regardless of what, side of the coin you fall on.
Yeah. And I gotta say, like, I feel like I'm late to the game on the whole debate scene, because like after I deconverted from Christianity, and I started, being a lot more confrontational, I guess, in the online space. Like I slowly started getting into more of the debate tactics and
Right.
how to debate well and everything. And I've just kind of been on a slow uptick, because it never occurred to me like, oh, you should really learn how to debate well first before you start like shit talking people in Facebook comments.
Yeah.
Which is how I got into it.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, even though the things I'm going to talk about today are more like, they're more about calm, they're more thought processes that you should consider, they come very much in handy during those types of debates as well. Two of the best things I think people can do for themselves is get familiar with debate and get familiar with improv. That's something else that I think really the background in comedy, I think really, really helps with conversation and debate skills, because you learn to think on your feet, you learn to think really fast. And I'll talk a little bit more about why thinking on our feet and thinking fast often trips us up and makes us feel like we're losing every debate we're in. But I did want to let people know that even if you really, really like those call-in debate type styles of debate, you will still want to take these notes and these thought processes into that style of debate. Like if your dream is being on one of the call-in shows like we're on, that's excellent. And you can still take what we're going to talk about and translate it there as well. For anybody who's watching, I'm one of the co-hosts of Talk Heathen on the ACA. And I feel like I get comments every time I'm one of the co-hosts about my style of debate and how people find it interesting. But in reality, all it is taking the way that I debate with people in real life and doing it live online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And honestly, I feel like a lot of the times, a lot of people that are watching those kind of debates, like on the ACA, on the line, and other call-in shows, I get the feeling that most people just want to see epic meltdowns and dumpster fires as opposed to thoughtful conversations.
Yes. And that's something else that I think is really important is I think we especially in America right now, I think we have forgotten what the actual definition of debate is. And we think that for example, I have a lot of people tell me they're afraid to call themselves an atheist because they don't feel like they're mad enough and they don't feel like they're ready to call Christians stupid. And I'm like, whoa. That's not what you have to do to be an atheist. And I'm sorry that that's the vibe you get. And so I think it's very important to show people there are so many different styles of communication. And while there are the entertaining styles that you and I are a part of, there's also the more like real world conversational, nobody's calling anybody names, nobody's insulting anybody, nobody's hanging up on anybody. And it can lead to very successful outcomes as well. So I think marrying those two things, because man, I love a good call-in debate. And what I like about those is they're consensual too, right? Because the person called in. So it's like, oh, I feel like we can just go. But at the same time, I think it's important to know the rules so that you can break the rules, if that makes sense.
Right. No, I totally agree about that. Now, I know that you kind of have sort of I guess a set list, for lack of a better phrase, for what to talk about. And I mean, I've got some questions too, but I just thought that maybe you might want to start off, kind of guiding us along in having this discussion on how to have better discussions.
Yeah. And please feel free to interrupt me at any time. I tell people I love talking about this stuff and I can just keep talking. So feel free to cut me off and interrupt me, pull up some comments if I'm missing them, because once I start talking about this, I zero in horse blinders. It's just one of my favorite things to talk about. When people get so nervous when they think about debate, but once you know what you're doing, debate becomes so much fun that you want to talk about it and do it all the time, but not for the reasons that you think, not because oh, I'm going to win every time or whatever. And let me tell you, my parents hate to see me coming. Let me tell you, because they can't get anything over on me anymore. But regardless, so the first thing that I want to say that I think is a really important point is you are not going to win. You're not going to win. Even if you do, you don't. There's no such thing as winning. The majority of realistic conversations that we have that end up becoming debates, that person has already decided how they feel. So even if you win, that person is going to walk away saying they won. Have you ever seen CNN and Fox News post the exact same clip and notice the difference in their headlines? One's like, oh, so-and-so destroyed so-and-so. And then the other one's like, no, actually the other person destroyed that person. And they use the same clip because both sides have already decided before they even post that clip, which one won or which one, destroyed the other person or something like that. So if you go into a conversation already knowing that you're not there to win and there's not going to be a winner and a loser, it relieves so much of the pressure that comes with the word debate or what we think we know to be debate. And it also alleviates your job to have to win, and it helps you focus more on the concept. And the concept is, what can I teach this person in this moment? Because something else a lot of people don't understand is, say you and I are engaging in a debate. Maybe I'm talking about, Christian nationalism, and maybe for the sake of this conversation, you're a Trump supporter. I will never see you change your mind. I'm never going to see it, unfortunately. But what I can do, is I can plant the seed. I can plant the ideas that you're going to take with you. And over the next few days, weeks, months, that's going to really kind of worm its way into your brain. And 2 years from now, you're going to be different than you were when we had our conversation. In no world that we live in, are you going to walk away from my conversation with me being, damn, like I'm different. Like, wow, I'm glad I had that conversation because I'm going to change my life right now. That it doesn't happen, except the way I became an atheist was I took some shrooms, but that's a different story. It doesn't happen in conversation and debate. So that if you get rid of the idea that I have to win, and if you get rid of the idea that I can change this person's mind right here, you eliminate 99% of what people get so worked up about and riled up about and tense about when they go into a conversation or a debate. So thoughts, comments, questions?
Yeah. So first of all, there's a very big question that needs to be answered. Okay. It comes from your channel. All right. Saul Mighty's confused. Why are you talking to a diehard mythicist? I take this in a funny, like I'm being very lighthearted about that. I don't consider myself a diehard mythicist just because like I can be easily swayed with evidence. So like that I wouldn't consider that diehard, but I thought that was a funny comment. Sorry.
Wait, because you can be swayed with evidence? That's a bad thing?
No. I disagree with the characterization of being a diehard mythicist because I can be swayed with good evidence, and I'm just not yet. So like I am firm in my position, but I can easily be swayed with good evidence, and that's all it would take.
Yeah.
So, but before we continue, I did have some comments on what you were just saying, but I do want to remind everybody, just like Daniel did a super chat over on my channel, any super chats are going to come through either on Sydney's channel or on my channel. We'll be able to see. We will interact with anybody's super chats, $5 or more, and we'll directly answer your questions and everything like that. Just like with Daniel right now, who says another NanoCon reunion, hey, Flavor Town forever. Sydney's ability to give talks and host panels at such a high energy level for an entire weekend needs to be studied. And I agree. You did an awesome job at NanoCon.
So funny story about talking to Daniel. After NanoCon, my brain was like fried, and I forgot that the term comeuppance, like when somebody gets their comeuppance, is a like bad thing. Like, oh, who got their comeuppance? I was thinking it meant like who got their like day in the sun. And I was like, oh, who got their comeuppance? And it was somebody that I was really proud of. And there was a long silence. And I think he was like, oh, she really doesn't like this person. And I saw the look on his face. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean comeuppance. I meant who's getting their day, who's getting their revenge. It's this person that I really like. And I just the look on his face, he was so polite. He was so kind, but I could see he's like, oh, this person probably, I don't know why she hates this person so much. It was very funny. You had to be there maybe. But I did not mean comeuppance. I meant I was very proud of the person I was talking about, and he was very concerned. It was delightful. Something else.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I also forgot that blowing smoke up somebody's ass was like complimenting them. When you said I think you said somebody was blowing smoke up your ass, and I was like, who? I'm going to go fight him. And you're like, no, they were saying like, oh, sorry. My bad.
Yeah. That for everybody that didn't know, I did a comedy routine as Brocephus at NanoCon. That was totally improv. Like I didn't have a set going up or anything like that. I just sort of thought on my feet there. But everybody said you did a really good job, and so I went to Sydney and I'm like, look, I feel like everybody's blowing smoke up my ass. Did I really do a good job, or like is there just like looking all that great?
Yeah, and it was like 10 a.m. and I was like, who? I'm gonna fight him. And you're like, no, they said I did well. They said I did a good job. And I'm like, well, now I got to fight him on principle anyway. So where were we? Oh yeah. So
okay, yeah. Well, so I did have a couple thoughts or questions about what you were just talking about. I typically always keep that in mind, what we had just been talking about. Whenever going into a conversation, like I don't expect to change people's minds like right then, but I always sort of see myself as sort of like a lighthouse that's shining a light through the fog. And it's the same reason why I continue to like argue and refute the same points like thousands of times over, is because for me, I don't know which time is going to be like the trigger for somebody to like start reconsidering stuff and thinking, deeper about things. And so like maybe if I say it this way this time, it'll finally click for somebody or something like that. So I definitely want to echo, like, never go into those kinds of discussions with either a diehard believer or like a diehard Trump supporter, anybody that's diehard on any kind of thing, and expecting to change their mind like right there and sort of win the discussion. I recently had like a more, I'll in quotes, professional debate, just more of a structured debate. And I have to say, at the very end of it, my interlocutor, my debate opponent, did not even answer the question that the debate was about. And I continuously addressed directly the question of the debate. And the so-called judges at the end of it were like, yeah, this was a nothing burger. Neither side won. And I'm like, the dude didn't even address the actual thing of the debate. And so like, it can be kind of disheartening when you're, in a debate and it's an obviously way too biased crowd towards one position or away from one person just because their personality, because that's what I get into a lot.
Well, and by eliminating the need to win, you realize that it stops mattering whose audience you're in. So, for example, I'm part of a group called the Conversation Coalition, and we actually go into church settings and have these conversations on their turf, because we're not afraid to answer these questions, and we're not afraid to have these conversations, because we know we're not there to win. We're there to make really great points that are going to stick with people. And so once you get rid of the idea that there needs to be a winner or a loser, and you focus more on what can I leave them with that's going to be a brain worm they're not going to forget, you kind of win no matter what, honestly, because you're like, I'm going to give them a lot to think about. I'm going to have a great attitude. I'm not going to attack anybody. And they won't be able to say that I was aggressive, that I was argumentative, that I lost, that I this, that I that, because I'm not there to win. I'm there to answer your questions. I'm there to bring up really solid points that I know are going to stick with you, even though you're pretending like they're not going to. And I'm there to make you really question all the things that you used to stand really firm with, that used to be like your whole personality. And so when you do that, it doesn't really matter if you're in the lion's den or not, because you're just there to have a conversation. And I think something that bothers me a lot too is when people try to gatekeep debate. For example, I hear all the time, a question isn't an answer to a question. So like if you're the person I'm arguing with and you ask me a question and I ask you a follow-up question, you're like, what do you think about this thing? And I'm like, well, what do you think about this thing? People go, oh, that's not a real answer. You're just asking me questions back. That is a real answer. That is a real answer. You're allowed to ask follow-up questions. You're allowed to ask for clarification. You're allowed to ask for the parameters of what they're talking about. If they say, well, where do morals come from? If you don't believe in God, where do you get your morals from? And I say, well, where specifically do you get your morals from? Like, are they given to you by Jesus, by God, for the like? How do you get your morals? And I'll tell you whether or not I agree that that's a reliable way to find your morals. Some people will say, well, that's just a this or a that. That's a red herring or whatever. You don't have to know shit about shit to be a good debater. You don't have to know theories, philosophies, terms like red herring. People, they watch our channels and they think because the callers call in and they go, oh, that's a straw man or whatever, they think they have to know all of those theories and what that means and what that looks like. You don't have to know anything to know what you're talking about. For example, I never talk about straw man. I never talk about red herrings. I never talk about debate theory. I say, I've never seen God. Like, regardless of whether that's I ain't never seen it, right? In order to believe in God, I got to see God. And so far, that hasn't happened. I don't care what philosopher wrote this book or what biblical scholar wrote that book. Ain't shit got to do with me. I just haven't seen God. Right. And that's what I need to believe in God. People think when they get involved in debate, or in order to get involved in debate, you have to be read up. You have to have studied this and read that and know this and know that and be ready for all these philosophers. My favorite response when somebody's like, well, this biblical scholar said this, what do you think about that? I go, what's that got to do with me? Okay. Like, my uncle self-published a book on Amazon. You can write and publish whatever you want. What's that got to do with me? Like, okay, so that person said in their book, oh, atheists don't have anything to live for. Does that make it true? Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer is a real book, and Abe Lincoln was a real man. Does that mean it happened? No. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
When you eliminate, because what happens is it always breaks down into my philosopher versus your philosopher, my author versus your author, my speaker versus your speaker, like Pokemon, like you're just throwing Pokemon at each other instead of staying in the conversation, in the debate, like you said, circling back to, okay, the question was this. Why do we keep going off in all these different directions? The question is this. We need to come back to this, regardless of who published what, regardless of who said that, regardless of what scientist it turns out was an a-hole or got, exposed by Me Too or whatever. Shit doesn't have to do with me. Like, okay, like, oh, you didn't, okay, whatever, right? Thoughts so far?
Yeah. Well, so do you think that it can be sort of rhetorically negative in maybe like your, I guess, against you, like if you happen to not know something particular, like some of these more particular details? Like I'll give you a for instance that happened to me recently. I was debating this guy named Wi-Fi Gospel. I can't remember what his actual name is, but I was debating him, and he was a general tag apologist, right? So instead of actually tackling the question of whether or not the Christian God exists, what he did was he just tried to establish the Christian God as the reason why, like, logic exists. And so it felt rhetorically powerful in the conversation for him to question me on, what are the basic, like, lowest level, the laws of logic, right? Like, what are those? And I'm like, I can look them up. It doesn't really matter for this debate, but like, I felt like in that moment, it was a bit rhetorically powerful for him to be like, oh, can you name these? You can't name these? Oh, okay. Kind of thing. What do you think about those situations? Do you think that's rhetorically powerful, or do you think that that's just, I thought it was a dick move, but I'm wondering what you think.
Yeah. So that's actually a really great question. When you don't care about being incorrect about something, when it is no longer of any value to who you think you are as a person, you can't get embarrassed by stuff like that anymore. So, for example, one of my favorite things to talk about is how I no longer have any issue with admitting I'm wrong, because then I learn something all the time. I learn things every day by just being like, oh, I don't know what that is. What is that? What is this? Like just now, I admitted to 2 different times I used a phrase incorrectly and looked like a dumbass, right? So when somebody calls in and they're like, well, have you ever heard of Occam's razor or whatever? I go, no, tell me about it. And then they're like, wait, but everybody told me you wouldn't give me a chance to speak. They don't say that, but they react as though like, wait, but I was told when I call into these shows or when I talk to these atheists, they don't let me talk. They interrupt me. But when you give them the floor, one, you give them a chance to talk. So that negates their ability to say, well, you just won't let me speak. Well, y'all are just going to talk over me. No, I'm giving you the floor. 2, it totally throws them off, because everybody has been told in religious debate, and by the way, anybody watching, this works for conversations you have in relationships with people. It doesn't have to be Christianity versus atheism. It could be about anything. They are completely and totally thrown off when you go, no, I've never heard about that. Tell me about that. And then as they describe it to you, one, they usually can't, because they didn't know about it either. They got it from a script or something. They'll read a script. And then when you say, please explain that to me in your own words so I can understand, they don't know what it means in their own words. Usually they've just been regurgitating what they were told they needed to say for so long that the meaning has escaped them. Or maybe they do know what it means, and now they get the floor to talk about it. And as they're explaining it to you, you can go, oh, okay, so here's my problem with that. You said this, and then now that you know what it is and what they're talking about, you can then address it in points. So when that guy goes like, oh, you don't know what that is? You don't know what that is? You go, no. And it takes that power away. It like sucks that power away because you're like, you done? You done peacocking? I'd like to learn what this is. Like, you done? You know what I mean? Like, okay, like we have established that I don't know what this is. Are you going to teach us or should we just move on? Right? When you take that power away from them, they just look kind of deflated, or they're like, oh, I thought this was the part where I was going to make them really mad and they were going to do that thing everybody says, or they hang up or they stop talking. It's like, no, I'm just here to learn what you said you were going to teach me. If you don't want to teach me, that's fine. That's a little weird that you brought up.
Yeah, I think in this moment right now, like the entire community needs to stamp a new, I guess, title or fallacy like name or something like that, and that's called peacocking it. And that's it, when you're grandstanding about something and it has no bearing on the actual conversation. You're just being a total dick.
Yeah.
Quit peacocking.
Yeah. And honestly, like if somebody's gonna be a dick on a live stream, let them make themselves look like an asshole. It's like, man, she was nice to you the whole time and you just kept flexing, because they're poking, they're waiting for me to be like, well, you know what? And if you don't, it just makes them look like they brought a bulldozer to a bike convention, right? And you're just like, bruh, like, what the hell is the matter with you? I'm just here. Nothing will infuriate people more than when you remain calm and you just look at them like you're concerned for them. You're not even mad. You're just like, are you okay? Are you all right? Just explode, they spoil. And
do you need a minute?
yeah. For lack of a better term, successful communication is kind of just mind games, to be honest. Like, for lack of a better term, it's I'm going to remain calm. I'm going to remain collected, not because I want to look honorable next to this man, but because I know it'll just, you know, like if they can't get to me, if I'm just sitting here being like, hey bro, you good? Like, you okay? Like, do you need a minute? We can pause. We can stop. They're just I learned that in debate when I was in college. I would do that to people all the time, where they'd be just, going off and you're just like, no, continue, please, by all means. But you're letting your face say everything that you're thinking. And none of it is rage. None of it is anger. It's all, are you well? Are you good? So I said all that to say, in that moment, let him look like a real a-hole, because what he's trying to do is get under your skin. And instead you can be like, okay, well, if you're not going to teach us about what that is, then I'm just going to move on. Or if you're not interested in telling me what that's about, then I don't know why you brought it up. And you can either give them the floor to talk about it and then address it as they put it into kind of easier to understand human language, or they don't actually know how to describe it in their own words. All they have is their script. And then you can say, so it sounds like you don't necessarily know any better than I do what it is you're talking about. Like, it sounds like you also can't put it into your own words. So it sounds like we share that. And then they're like, oh, I don't share anything with you. If you can continue to attack them with how they are like you, they will hate it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Now, I'm sorry I derailed you from
No.
where you were going, but please continue.
Yeah. So, well, I thought that was an excellent point. Actually, that's one of my next points. Is you don't have to be read up on philosophy, on theory, on debate words, on these. All you have to do is have a standard for yourself. My standard is I don't believe things that I don't see, and I don't believe things that I don't have enough physical evidence to prove. That's it. Whether it's God, whether it's unicorns, whether it's ghosts, if I don't have physical proof, because they do the whole, well, you can't see germs. It's like, okay, but there's physical proof that germs exist. Like, you can see it. If I don't have a high power microscope at home. If that's my standard, and if it doesn't meet that standard, it doesn't meet my standards, and I don't believe it. And then they say, well, what if? I had a TikTok go viral because somebody asked me, what if science came out tomorrow with evidence that God was real? It's like, okay, then I'd believe it. I have questions, and I wouldn't worship him because he sucks if it's the Christian biblical Bible, but I would believe it. Like what I just told you, if there was evidence, I'd believe it. If evidence came out tomorrow to support that ghosts are real, okay, I'd believe it. And then people say, well, lots of people around the world have seen ghosts. How do you know lots of people around the world haven't seen God? Okay, I believe people who believe that they have had experiences with God. I believe them. Do I think it was God that they experienced? No. But I believe them when they say they felt like they heard God or saw God or felt God. I like to ask people, describe to me a moment in which you felt the presence of God. When was that? Where was that? A lot of times they'll say, the birth of my first child, or I almost died. I believe them that they believe that. I don't think they're lying to me. I think they sincerely think that's true. I don't think that was God in that moment. I think that was brain chemistry. I think that was your body's physiological response to a moment. People talked about having the exact same experience at the freaking Eras tour, right? You can have that physiological charge and response that feels like a spiritual experience, and also be able to explain that scientifically. But I do believe people when they say they felt those things, and I do believe them. I just don't believe that was God. And so when you're able to give somebody that, when you're able to say, I believe you feel that way, again, it throws them off because they expected you to be like, no, and you're dumb, or everybody knows that's not what that was, or you're lying. I don't think they're lying. I think they felt something that they choose to believe, or just inherently believe because of the way they've been indoctrinated by their religion, that they felt God. However, if they were to speak to a neurologist or a neurosurgeon, they could probably also have that feeling that they got in that moment explained scientifically, and explained chemically, and explained in a physical manifestation that exists on Earth. If that makes sense. I was giving you room in case you had questions or thoughts.
No. I'm taking it in right now.
Yeah. I'll keep going, and then feel free to interrupt me. And that surprises people too. Yeah. The more often that you can surprise people, the more, I think, successful conversations you'll have, because they'll get so shocked by something you say that they'll forget all the script attack stuff they were about to come with, and they're going to be like, "Whoa, wait a second. I want to talk about this." When you can reveal things to them, like crazy unpopular opinions you have, things like that, and you can show them, I think I'm right about this thing, but I also believe some kooky shit too. You want to talk about it? They're much more likely to engage with you and be like, wait, tell me more about this. And then you're open about this weird thing that is an unpopular opinion, and they're just confused because they're like, I felt like I would have got her, or I felt like I would have attacked her by pointing out the weird thing she believes. But instead, she's openly telling me about it and allowing me to call her a weirdo because of this thing that she already told me was going to be weird. I'm trying to think of a good example. Here's an example. I think that my body, my choice includes drugs. I think that I shouldn't be allowed to say, my body, my choice. I should be allowed to have an abortion. I should be allowed to make this decision, and also tell you that you can't smoke meth. That makes me a hypocrite. Your body, your choice. Now, should you sell it? No, that impacts other people's rights and freedoms. Should you make it? No, that impacts other people's rights and freedoms. If you're making it in a house, you're putting your neighbors in danger. You're putting your children in danger. Should you smoke meth and drive? No. The minute it impacts anybody else and their health and their safety, that's where it should become illegal. But I don't think that you doing meth in the privacy of your own home is my business. Your body, your choice. Is it a stupid choice? Absolutely. It's the dumbest freaking choice you can make. But your choice. I shouldn't be able to say that I should have bodily autonomy and privacy, but you shouldn't have bodily autonomy and privacy.
Right.
And
no, and I would agree with your position. Yeah, no, I mean, I would agree with your position on that.
Yeah. Like, I think the minute you are harming other people, if I'm trying to give other people abortions that they don't want, that's different. If you're trying to sell meth to people, that's totally different. You're ruining other people's lives when you do those things. But that's one thing I like to bring up when I'm having these conversations, because they stop and they're like even meth? And I'm like, yeah, even meth. And they're like, well, what about all the meth on the streets? And I was like, well, the people selling it are criminals. The people making it and putting lives at risk are criminals. But the guy shooting up in the privacy of his own home, not a criminal, in my opinion. Yeah. Just an idiot. just I think you should be able to get stupid tattoos. I think you should be able to smoke cigarettes if you want. Again, if the smoke is in my house and I'm breathing it and getting secondhand smoke, that's where you lose me. That's where the problem starts. So if you can humanize yourself by being like, listen, here's things I'm willing to admit that are unorthodox that I agree with. You can ask me anything you want about it. I will be totally honest. I will answer any question you want. And if you want to ask me about my political beliefs or my religious beliefs, I will answer any question you have. But when you start yelling, you're going to lose me. When you start yelling, when you start going off, if you're going to ask me these questions, don't get mad when I then ask you the same question you asked me. And many times what that does is that de-escalates the energy, right? They come in yelling. Like I was at a wedding once and somebody came up to me and they're like, I was at a wedding in Arkansas, but I was living in Chicago at the time, and a stranger, I do not know who this person was. They were some distant relative of the bride. They come up to me and they're like, so I hear you're one of those Obama liberals from up in Chicago. And I went, yeah. And there was a silence because he thought I was going to be like, what? No, huh? Like who said that? Like, I was just like, yep. And he's like, well, I just want you to know, I hate Obama. And he's like, whatever I was at the time, like he was a Muslim or whatever. And I was like, well, that's unfortunate. But he's president. So if I were you, I'd find things you like about him just so you can tolerate the next 4 years, and that was it. He thought he was going to come up to this, like, I think I was 24 at the time, 25. He thought he was going to come up to this young girl in her little, her little dress and be like, I'm going to embarrass you in front of all these people because I'm in a safe echo chamber where nobody here is going to be mean to me because not only is this my town, but it's my family and I can do whatever I want. And the funny thing was he first sent a little boy to talk to me. And the little boy was like shaking like a leaf. And he's like, I hear you're one of those Obama liberals. And that's when I was like, yeah. And then the little boy, like, it didn't go the way his dad or whatever told him it was going to go. So he's just like, oh. And I said, who told you to say that to me? And that's when he points and the guy comes running up. And that's when he's like, I heard you're one of those, And I was like, yeah. Where did you think this conversation was going?
That's really shitty to send a kid in to like ask the question that you don't want to like, have the cojones to come up and ask yourself. Like, yeah, and to do it at somebody else's wedding. That's right, honey.
Well, and the funny thing was, the person whose wedding it was at later became instrumental in the first iterations of the COVID vaccine. Like this was a person who was smart and intelligent, who's like many of us from the South just have distant relatives, right, who don't at all share any of our thoughts. And so I wasn't the least bit offended because she's not like that at all. She's quite the opposite. She has these exact same conversations with her relatives that I have. But I just remember being like, what would he do if I just sucker punched this kid? If I was just like take that karate chop. I wouldn't do that though. He was a cute kid. I hope wherever he's more.
Well, I just can't imagine like what he thought was going to happen. Like what he thought that you were going to do to the kid. like scream at him like, yeah, what the fuck ever, huh? Like, I don't even know what to expect there.
I don't know what he thought. I'm guessing he thought I was going to be like, oh my God, like, I'm so scared. Who told you this? Oh no. He thought he was doing me a favor by sending the child instead of himself. Right.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I'm guessing. I imagine this man doesn't have a lot of rocks in the bucket. You know what I'm saying? Who knows? But I mean, the way he like ran up to me when he saw that kid point, I was like, oh, okay, this makes so much more sense now. But when you eliminate what people want to see, they want to see, I'm not ready. I'm not prepared. Oh gosh, I'm afraid I'm going to lose. Instead, when they see, hey, how's it going? Let me shake your hand, even though you're being an asshole. They kind of get freaked out a little bit because they're like, am I dealing with a crazy person? Am I like, wait, I thought I was, wait, are you out crazying me? Out crazy him. Do it. Especially when you have eyeballs the size of mine. I love just like widening my eyes and being, when Mormons come up and talk to me, or like Latter-day Saints come up and talk to me and they're like, do you have a moment? I'm like, I sure do. They do not want to talk to you anymore after that. When you're like, I do have a moment for the Lord Jesus Christ. They're like, this person, this is not a sane person. Like this is, oh no. Something else that I think is really important, and this is a big one. And while you're training yourself out of this one, it's going to be painful. It's going to hurt. It's going to feel like shit, but you got to do it. Speed doesn't matter. And going slower can actually work in your favor and be more powerful. Where we trip ourselves up in these heated exchanges is speed. For some reason, we think if we don't have a ready to go right then, we're losing. So we've already established we don't care about losing. Don't care. Doesn't matter. Who cares? That person's already decided they won, no matter how this goes. But also, when you think about things, people get even more worked up. So for example, they're like, well, what about this offensive thing that I know is going to get under your skin? I love to say, that's a great question. Not because it's a great question. It's usually a dumb fucking question. Sorry, am I allowed to say the F word? I think I've said it like 10 times on this.
Oh, yeah.
No. Okay. I hope you don't get like
my channel, it's per. No, you're fine.
Okay. Well, in that case, and I just started like going off. Wouldn't that have been crazy, by the way, if when I was like, here's an unpopular opinion, and I just pulled some like really offensive shit out of the gate and just wrecked the stream like immediately? That'd been crazy. Sorry, my Adderall's kicking in, that's all. So where was I going with this? Oh, yes. When you tell somebody that they had a really great question, they don't know what to do after that. Because again, they've been told you won't let them talk, you'll interrupt them, you'll talk over them, you'll come at them with like philosophers and books and scientists and this and that, like the script. Because I hate to say it, but as much as we talk about evangelicals having scripts, we also kind of have scripts on our end that involve a lot of these like publications and philosophers and things like that. The four horsemen, from back in the day. And I always say, that's a really great question. What do you think about that? Because what I need is a moment to think. I'm masquerading it as a moment to hear what they have to say. And also, I genuinely want to hear what they have to say, because either A, they're not going to have anything to say about it because it was part of a script and they weren't preparing for the part where you let them talk. Or B, they actually have a lot to say about it, and now they're breaking it down for you in a way that you can approach their points, as opposed to this, what do you think about this overarching idea? What do you think about it? Well, I think this. Oh, well, I think that. Oh, but what about this? Well, here's why I disagree with that point, if you don't mind, right? For example, most of us agree that we don't want children to starve. Most of us agree that we want kids to be educated well in the public school system. Most of us agree that we don't like seeing homeless people living on the streets. The way that we resolve those issues is often where we differ. And so when you can say, oh, I actually agree with that, not only do you agree, but you're admitting it. You're not supposed to admit it. Says who? The same person who said, I'm not allowed to ask you a question in response to a question. Fuck them. They clearly don't know anything about having a decent conversation, right? And if you can make little jokes like that throughout the debate too, they hate it because they laugh. I love making people laugh when I'm in a debate with them because they freaking hate it. They're like, I'm supposed to hate you and you're funny and I don't like it. Especially when you can self-deprecate during a debate.
Yeah, I do that a lot.
Yep.
Well, yeah. I usually like starting off conversations. Like they'll have like a very like just inflammatory like summary, for what they want to talk about, and I'll start off making them laugh their asses off, and then it kind of puts them off kilter a little bit.
Yeah, I do that all the time. I self-deprecate. Like the other day, I was with my parents, and we were going to park at a restaurant. There was one parking spot left, and right as we went to park in it, it was like a handicap spot, and they were like, "Oh, I guess we can't park there." And I said, "Well, did you tell them your daughter's a liberal? Did you tell them that? Maybe they'll let us park there. Maybe they'll let us use that spot." Just stuff like that. Like when you can make jokes at your own expense that people are very surprised to hear that you're making about yourself. It disarms them entirely. It disarms them. It brings down the energy. It brings down the rage and the anger. And they just can't, a lot of times they just can't believe that you said it first. That you're like, yeah, I'll say it. Like, that's fine. I'll make a joke at my own expense. It's totally fine. You're not worried about losing. You're not worried about looking dumb. Because if the dumbest person thinks you're dumb, oh well, right? Like if the person with the worst opinions that thinks you're dumb, you're doing all right. I tell my husband all the time, there are certain people who, if they like you, it's a bad thing. It's not a good thing if they like you. If they think, yeah, I can get along with this person, you should be concerned, and you should probably do some introspective work on why they think they can get along with you that well. With some people, not all people. But being able to, you tell them, that's a great question. What do you think about that? They, one, give you time to think. Even if you can listen to what they have to say, or you can literally just, oh wait, this person said, Sydney could probably convince anyone of anything with a good New York cab driver impression. Yeah, it's true. It's true. That's true. You know, what are you talking about? Why are you so full of shit? Why are you wasting my time like this? Like, what are you, yeah, absolutely. Like if I could channel just like a New York cab driver for sure. But you give yourself time to think, and then you can think while they're talking about it, you can think of a really good comeback or point to make. Sometimes it's something they say in their explanation that you can kind of grip onto. You're like, got it. That's what I'm going to start with that. Or you're not listening to what they have to say at all, and you're just thinking about their question. And then when they're done, you go, oh, wow, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that with me. My thoughts on this are, and you're ready to go. Right? You thank them for sharing, which again, you want to take as many opportunities to throw them off that aren't gaslighting them. You're not lying to them. You're not manipulating them. You're literally just saying, it's been great talking to you. And they're like, that's not how I heard these things go. Right? So speed doesn't matter. Take your time. Silence can often scare people a lot, and they'll keep talking. If you're silent, have you ever been mad at somebody and they text you and you read it and you don't respond, and then they text you again and you read it and you don't respond, and then they send like a paragraph, they just like dump on you. Silence makes people so uncomfortable. If you're not sure what to say, be silent, and they will keep dumping, and either give you something to latch onto, to respond to, or tell on themselves in a way where you can be like, wait a second, but just a second ago you said this thing. Why are you changing it to this thing now? And it shows you were listening. It shows you were giving them the opportunity to talk, but it shows you were paying attention too. And you can use them as an opportunity to break down what they're saying, and then kind of grab onto a point when you're actually not sure what point to make, and you panic for just a second on the inside. You're like, I don't have a response to this. If that makes sense. You know what? Somebody told me once that I should stop asking if that makes sense, because I know it makes sense. So I'm going to stop.
Yeah, I think it totally makes sense. And, but stop me if this is like one of, I guess one of your points that you're going to be getting to, but is there any, criteria or any good advice as to when to sort of, for the lack of a better phrase, read someone the riot act, on something like, I have a personal sort of line when it comes to like acts of homophobia and transphobia. I usually try to like shut that shit down, and misogyny is another one. I shut that shit down like sort of immediately. Are there, do you have any good suggestions of like when that would be appropriate, like reading people the riot act about that kind of stuff?
Yes. So that's a great question. And I'm not just saying that as like a diversion tactic. That's truly a good question. Like, oh shit, I taught him my secrets. God damn it. Oh no. So what I need a
minute to think about that.
Yeah. What I do is I go, hold on. I go, time out. I have been very respectful to you. Right. And they go, yeah. And I said, great. I am not going to let disrespect enter this conversation. That's disrespectful. What you're saying, disrespectful. I wouldn't say it about you. You wouldn't say it about me. We are not going to say it about anybody else, especially when they're not here to defend themselves. Disrespectful. I frame it more of like nope, haven't I been respectful to you? Yes, they have. Like, they have to admit, yes, you've been respectful. Have I interrupted you? Have I disrespected you in any way? Have I called you names? Great. We are not going to start name calling. We are not going to start accusing people. We are not going to start being disrespectful. And most of the time that works. Most of the time. There's been a couple times where they've done it again, and I've been like, I'm walking away if you keep being disrespectful. I'm walking away. If you keep being disrespectful, this is over. And that's a bummer, because up until now, we've been respectful. You gentle parent who you're talking to, essentially. And then if they keep doing it, you hang up, you log off, you walk away, whatever. We don't do disrespect. I tell them, I would not let somebody come up to me and say that you are a, pedophile or whatever. I would not let somebody come up to me and say that you are this, that, the other. I would not allow them to say that. And hopefully you would not allow them to say that about me. Why are we saying it about these other people? We're not saying that. We're not going to be disrespectful. And usually that calms them down. it's the difference between saying you this, you that, versus we this. We do not allow disrespect. We do not allow this. That is a lowbrow conversation. Something else that helps is when I'm like, no, hold on a second. You are so much smarter than that. You are so much smarter than what you just said. That is disrespectful to me, and it's disrespectful to you because you are so much smarter than that, than believing what you just parroted to me. And usually they'll be like, yeah. Whether or not you believe they're actually smarter than that, clearly they're not because they just said it. But when you say, no, hold on a second, you are smarter than that. And then they go really quiet and you're like, you are smarter than that. You are more respectful than that. And your mama did not teach you to talk that way. And they're like, yeah, you're right. Okay. So we can keep talking, but I'm not going to revisit disrespectful stuff, especially when that person isn't here to advocate for themselves and defend themselves. I wouldn't talk about you behind your back, even if I would. I'm not going to, like and usually that works really well. It's like, no, we're not here. We're not here to talk all this disrespectful stuff. Because they're expecting you to attack them. But when you actually hold them to a standard, they're very surprised. And they find themselves wanting to meet that standard. Not because they want you to like them, but because they want that fact to be right. They are smarter than that. Their mom didn't raise them that way. They are being respectful. We are being respectful. They don't give a shit what I think about them, but they suddenly recognize that they think in my mind, I've had them on this pedestal and they're falling off of it. And so now they want to get back on. They're like, yeah, you're right. We'll be respectful. And then again, if they start in again with like the whole snowflake stuff, it's like, nope, we're not doing disrespect here. And that's when I usually get really Southern. I'll be like, now I know your mama didn't teach you to talk that way. We're not doing respect. We're not doing disrespectful stuff. And that way you deplatform that topic immediately. You're like whipping the rug. Say what you want about me, but we're not going to be disrespectful about people that aren't here to defend themselves and stuff that you and I both know is not true, even if maybe they think it is a little bit true. I do that all the time, especially with relatives. When they're like, well, what about the gays? And no. You and I both know that the TV lies to us, right? Like that the news has been lying. Like we're not doing that. If you don't say that like all news is fake. You just say, now you and I both know it's you and me against the TV, man. You and I both know that the TV can be full of shit and they just want to sell ads and they think you and I are stupid enough to parrot this stuff. Don't give them that win. And then suddenly it's me and you against big bad TV who's just trying to get their, they push their ads and get their views and get us to say stuff that more people will watch. And they're like, oh yeah, big bad TV, big bad corporations want us to say this shit. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Okay. Mudley von Eyrick asked or stated that she followed up the diversion with self-deprecation. Double whammy.
Yeah. People do not know what to do when you are funny during what should be a really offensive or like defensive conversation. And it just de-escalates so much. And this is the kind of stuff I'm saying you take with you when you leave. They leave going, I met a nice atheist. I met a nice liberal. I met a nice whatever, like liberal woman, right? I don't know what to do with that. If that's possible, what else is possible? Maybe I can meet a nice trans person, which chances are they already have and they just don't know it, right? Like maybe I can meet, who knows? What you do is you poke a hole in everything they've been told by the people they trust the most. You poke a hole in what Charlie Kirk says or whatever. And when you just open that little bitty hole in their logic, they start to wonder privately, what else is bullshit? Like what else she's right. What else has the TV been feeding me? And then it spirals for them. They may never look back and attribute you to that first moment, but like you probably were the first person to really poke a hole in everything that they knew to be true. We were talking about our friend Godless Granny. She tells the most wonderful story about how her son walked in and was like, how did they survive on the ark with all the animal farts? And she was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, you know how we live. She said they live like several miles from a pig farm. And sometimes the methane is so strong, they can't breathe when they walk out of their front door. That's how strong that farm is. And it's miles away. And her son was like, so how did they deal with all the farts on the boat? How did anybody breathe? And that was all it took for her to realize, if one thing about the Bible was fake, what else about the Bible is fake? And just unraveled. It's a wonderful story that she tells. But you don't want to be the person that burns down everything they think. You want to be the person who just like pulls that little thread and lets the rest just kind of do its thing and ruin everything.
Right.
But like,
No, yeah, I
slow
totally
burn sort of
agree. Yeah, in a good kind of way. But please continue with I guess your set.
Yeah, I love that you called it a set too, because that's the perfect way. Let me take a drink real quick. Not sponsored, but delicious. So don't worry about answering their question the minute they ask it. Again, there's not a ticking timer. It's not a race. If they speed up, don't match their energy. Slow down. Just take your time. Seem like you're well grounded. Focus on what you really want to say. And make sure, because the number one reason we look back on arguments and go, oh, I should have said this, I should have said this, I should have said this, is because we were going too fast. We were allowing ourselves to match their energy when we shouldn't. They came to us, they came to talk to us. We get to control the speed and the energy if they're going to come to us and engage us in these conversations. If they're going to call in, if they're going to come up to us, they're going to talk to us. We get to do it at our own pace, or they don't get to talk to us because they started it. You want to, we talked a little bit about this, but you want to throw off their game by defeating their expectation. You know they expect you to interrupt them. You know they expect you to yell. You know they expect you to get defensive. So make it a personal point to do none of those things. It's hard. It's hard. Especially the first few times you do it, it is very hard. But the more often you do it, the more naturally it'll come to you. Because think about it. You are going to be the same person when you walk away. And they're going to be the same person when you walk away. So why do you care about winning or whatever? Why do you care what this person thinks about you? Clearly, you guys have so little in common that they're only engaging with you over a fight about your differences. If they're not paying my bills, I'm not going to get heated about whether or not they think I'm cool, right? Like if they're not the ones like, taking care of my dog or whatever, then why they're not my landlord? Why do I care about keeping them happy? It doesn't matter. And when you remove these pressures from yourself, you're able to just reframe this exchange, like a conversation. That's why I call them conversations more often than I call them debates, because truly, when you dismantle it into a conversation, it's just a conversation. And you don't go into conversations wanting to win. I don't call my best friend wanting to win. I just want to have a conversation, right? So that kind of mind game works both for yourself and for the person you're talking to. They were prepared by themselves, by the internet, by Red Pill podcasts, by Manosphere, whatever, to be interrupted, to not be allowed to speak. A lot of times, in order to show them how wrong they are with the things they believe, you just let them hear what they sound like. People ask me all the time, they're like, what happens when I'm against my will, I'm engaged in a debate that I wasn't ready for? Like maybe it's Thanksgiving, maybe I'm at a birthday party, like that wedding scenario. Like, what do I do when I'm in a space where for whatever reason, I can't just walk away and I have to engage? What do I do? I repeat back to people what they say to me. So they say, what do you think about this? Or what about this? Well, what do you think about this? And they tell you. Repeat back to them exactly what they said, not using a voice, not using a tone, not being like me. Like, okay, so you're saying this, because when they hear it out of somebody else's mouth, they're not going to like it. They're going to hear what they sound like and they're going to go, oof. And then they're going to go, no, dumbass. What I said was different version, maybe a little similar, but they tweak the parts that didn't sound good coming from someone else. So you go, oh, okay. So you're actually saying this, and they hear it again and they're like, ugh, yikes, does not sound good coming from someone else. And then they go, no, you misunderstand me, even though you didn't. You misunderstood me. I said this. And you go, okay, I want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. I want to make sure that I'm not misquoting you. You're saying this. And they go, yeah. And you go, so you're not saying, back to the first thing they said, this, this, this. You're saying this third thing. And they go, yeah. And you're like, oh, okay. Okay, let's talk about this third thing for a minute. I'm glad you don't think this first thing. I like to throw one of those in like, oh, thank God, I thought you were saying this first thing, but now that you're saying the third thing, let's talk about it. And because they hear what they sound like, they don't like it. They recognize there's an issue, and they can't say that you weren't listening, and they can't say you didn't give them a chance to talk, and they can't say that you don't understand them because you quoted them back to themselves multiple times and you allowed them the opportunity to reframe if you were misunderstanding. And that usually de-escalates conversations so fast. It's no longer fun for them, you know, whether it's a relative or somebody at work or whatever. It's no longer fun for them to come up to you because you never get heated, you never get riled up, and you never act like you lost. And so any reason they were coming up to bother you, it doesn't work because they don't get it from you, and they just stop engaging with you both in the long term and the short term. And usually they walk away being a little bit disappointed with how that went because they didn't get, you know, the manosphere points or whatever they were looking for, or the MAGA points, you know. So if you just repeat back to people what they say, they never like it. They never like it. No, you're misquoting me. Oh, am I? Okay. I never argue with them. I don't say no. I say, oh, am I? Because I just said back what you said. Do you want to like take a minute to tell me what you really meant? Oh, what I really meant was, okay, so just make sure I understand you. Because it makes it sound like it's important to me that I don't misquote you. I want to make sure that I address what you said as you said it. And so a lot of times that just hearing how they sound is so off-putting to them that they never want to hear that again. Or they're like, is this what I sound like to people? Yikes. Woof. And then they don't do it to you anymore, and they don't do it to other people anymore.
Yeah. I'm just sitting here thinking about like my past interactions with people, and I've done something similar to this, but when I've done it, I've usually like regurgitated it back to them, but I try to put it in ways that it kind of communicates what I think they're trying to communicate. So it's not necessarily exactly what they say, but it's like I rephrase it, or I explain it how it comes across to me, and I put it in maybe different terms so that they can, you know, see maybe what the issue is with what they're saying. Do you think that is valuable, or do you think that trying to regurgitate verbatim what they say is better?
So either way, I think great question, but I think either way it works. Most of the time, and I mean this respectfully, most of the time you're having these conversations, they're already phrasing it as basically as they can, just by nature. They're already explaining, unless they're reading off one of the infamous scripts, they're usually not using such like high vocabulary and language that you have to reframe what they're saying. But I do think if they say this, and you're like, oh, okay. So essentially, get me if I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong. Essentially what you're saying is this. You can reframe it in a way that is like, just for me to say it in my own words, what you were just saying, this. Because again, they'll go, no, or you'll reframe it in a much better way. And they'll go, yeah, that, even though that's not really what they were saying, but because you phrased it in a way that's less maybe lowbrow sounding or less aggressive sounding, they'll be like, oh yeah, that's actually what I meant. And you're like, oh great, I'm so glad that we could agree on this thing, even though most of the time you knew you didn't agree on that thing, but they jumped ship into that lifeboat to try and sound like that's what they meant because you phrased it in a way that's a lot better or a lot whatever more attractive for some reason. So verbatim, not necessarily necessary, just as long as they understand that you were listening and you can repeat back to them what they said in some way. And as long as you can make them hear their message from a second person, that's the most important thing, is basically, this is what you sound like, but without the attitude combined, you know? Excuse me. But yeah, that's an awesome question. I really like that. And something else that, oh, sorry, did you have another question?
No. I was just gonna say, please continue.
Yeah,
I'm loving. So when I'm listening to somebody and I'm genuinely like soaking or taking it in and everything like that, like I usually have some questions, but I usually just like listening. So yeah, please continue.
Well, and a lot of this stuff, when you really think about it, it's like, who would disagree? with this stuff. Like, who would disagree with? Let them talk, hear them out, make sure you understood them, yada, yada, yada. Like, most of it sounds very, oh, well, that's pretty easy. It's when you're putting it into practice that you're like, oh, I see how this kind of becomes a weapon of sorts. A lot of people after, you know, at NanoCon, I gave a presentation using basically the same outline about how this works and how to converse with people. People often say, how do you make it seem easy? How do you make it seem like it's not that big of a deal? Because you can say all day long, don't be afraid of being wrong. But in the moments where you're wrong, you can still feel your face burning, you know, your cheeks getting a little hot, like being a little offended, whatever. It's a lot easier to do these things when it's something that you used to identify with. So I used to be a Republican, Christian, conservative. That used to be who I was. Now, I recognize in hindsight, it's because that's who I was told that I was. I didn't actually know anything about really what that meant beyond, you know, Christianity. But it's easier to talk to somebody who is a Republican, conservative Christian when I remember what it felt like to be them. And I remember what it felt like to talk about atheists, if ever. We really didn't talk about them much because I don't think the church wanted to remind us that there was an option to be alive without God. But I remember how defensive I felt when I was proven wrong about anything. One of the best things debate in college did for me was I did a style called IPDA debate, and it's International Public Debate Association. And the layout for that form is you don't get to pick your topic, you draw your topic, and you don't get to pick what side you're on either. You and your opponent are told you're the affirmative, you're the negative. It doesn't matter if this is a topic that means a lot to you and you're usually for it. For the next 30 minutes, you're going to research as much as you can, as well as you can, to defend the opposite side. And there were so many times where I would research on behalf of something that I thought was the complete opposite of my beliefs. And as I was researching, I was like, oh shit, wait, Democrats believe this? Oh, wait, but that's what, I don't think that's bad. Wait, hold on. This is really confusing. And by being forced to engage as though that was my stance, I started to recognize what I had in common with this other group. And so when I look at people, or I talk to people, or I'm related to people whose whole entire personality is their political party or their religion or whatever, their stance on the immigrants or their stance on the LGBTQ community, I remember what it was like for certain beliefs to be my whole personality. And when somebody's personality gets basically proven wrong, it's like, who am I? You have this existential crisis where you're like, wait, if that's not right, or if I was lied to about this thing, what else have I been lied to about? Where am I getting these facts? I remember one of the most offensive things people could say to me at the time was, where did you get that information? They weren't calling me stupid, but I took it as such an attack because I knew I didn't know. I knew the answer to that question was, I heard it, I was told it, my friend said it, whatever, the TV said it. When all you do is ask people, where did you hear that? They get offended because they realize that's a good question. And my answer isn't going to be good enough when I say, I don't know, or when I say it just is. And that's when you run into people that are like, well, I've got stuff to do. I've got a job. So you look it up yourself, blah, 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 right? You get defensive when you feel like somebody's calling you stupid. But if you listen, they never called you stupid. That's you projecting onto them that you feel stupid because you don't actually know where the core of your personality and your beliefs come from. And some of the best changes I ever made in life were because somebody who was very close to me that I really cared about, be it a friend or a professor I really looked up to, would go, where did you hear that? Or why do you think that? And for the first time ever, I was questioned. I wasn't praised. I wasn't lauded for regurgitating what I had heard. I wasn't in a safe bubble. Somebody was just going, really? And I'm like, oh, this is somebody I really care about and I want to respect me. And I'm watching them disappointed that I hold this viewpoint. That hurts. That hurts a lot. Why do I hold this viewpoint? What are the harms with a different viewpoint? And then you look it up and you're like, wow, there really aren't a lot of harms with that other viewpoint. But that person never gets to see that. I've made a point of going back and telling the people that I remember having these moments with. I've talked to most of them since then and been like, hey, you don't remember this, but 15 years ago, like I made some offhanded comment and you stopped me and you very, very compassionately said, actually, did you know that actually this blew my freaking mind. I was mad at the time, but when I took it with me and I thought about it, you really helped me change and you don't even know it. Most of them don't even remember the moment I'm talking about, but they're like, oh, that's really cool. You know, we're still friends. And that's what I mean when I say you're never going to see the fruit of your labor, which sucks, but that doesn't mean that just a moment in time can't be the unraveling of somebody's entire system of beliefs, because they recognize everything they think they know about themselves, they've been told by somebody else, and they don't actually have a lot of evidence to back up. And also, another thing is, as hard as it is, sometimes you have to remain compassionate. You know, when, especially in our space, when we talk about like deconstruction and atheists versus Christians and things like that, you have to remember that, you know, the angry atheist is a trope, but the reason that's a trope is because people are so hurt to find out that none of that was real. They're hurt, they're angry, they feel like they were lied to when they find out the people they believed the most and the stuff that meant the most to them and the things they spent the last who knows how many decades worshiping, believing, clinging to isn't real. Like, of course that'll make you mad, but it hurts. And I try to remember that as easy as it is to be angry about everyone that lied to us, they weren't lying to us. They sincerely believed what they were telling us. They sincerely believed that gays are going to hell. They sincerely believed that if they didn't get you to shape up and do certain things, you were going to burn in hell forever. And that's really scary. And so to believe that hell is real and to believe that your loved ones can be sent there, and then to run into a loved one who's like, I disagree. I don't think that's real. When your whole life is about not ending up there, it's like, are you calling me stupid? Are you insane? You're willing to burn forever for the sake of playing devil's advocate? Are you kidding me? Of course it would send somebody spiraling. Obviously, there's a lot of people who are just, you know, rage baiters or whatever. You know, I feel like MAGA is just a whole bunch of rage baiters. And there are some people that I don't feel compassion towards. I don't feel compassion towards MAGA at all. Being a conservative Republican Christian is one thing. I think we've learned being MAGA is a whole different thing. MAGA says, fuck you, fuck them kids, fuck everybody else. I'm here for me. I'm here for what I want. I don't even like my wife. I don't even like my kids. I'm going to rule the roost. Fuck those guys, right? I love having a conversation with those guys because I can just be freaking sarcastic the whole time. They can't handle it and they can't get under my skin, because at the end of the day, at least I'm not a MAGA supporter. I'm not part of a cult like that. But when it comes to people of other belief systems, I think that a lot of those choices aren't choices. I don't think it's a choice to be a conservative Christian. I think it's a product of indoctrination. I don't think it's a choice to believe in hell. I think the stakes are so high that you can't afford to not believe in hell when you're a religious person. I do think it's a choice to just lie to yourself and say illegals are criminals when you have to go to the workplace to arrest them because they have a full-time job. Yeah, that's somebody who's draining the United States of resources. Absolutely. Somebody who's working 60 hours a week. Yeah, sure. Okay. You know, that's where you lose me, because that's factually inaccurate and the facts are readily available. And if you choose not to look at them when they're everywhere, that's a choice that you make. But
yeah. So in the vein of showing compassion to your interlocutor and taking them at their word, what would you say is like a good set of criteria or a good indication that you know, maybe they're a troll, or that they don't sincerely believe in the thing that they're arguing for, but you know, they're doing the whole rage baiting thing? Yeah. How would you handle that, and how would you like make that determination?
If they come up to you and they start having a conversation, I always say, do you actually want to talk about it, or do you have a point you want to make? I was like, because if you have a point you want to make, we can skip all the other stuff and you can just tell me what that point is. Like, do you actually want to talk about it? Or are you here to like, do you have like a bit you want to use real quick? Because you can use that bit. Because again, it immediately deflates any sense of, you know, cavalier peacocking they had, especially with, you know, these manosphere type red pill shit. They come in like this and it's like, all right, if you want to talk, I'm willing to talk. But if you're just here to use a line on me, I'm ready for it. Use the line. They hate being called out like that. And they'll either say like, oh, like, yeah, you got me, or they'll use the line anyway, or they'll say, no, I really want to talk. And I'll say, okay, but if you really want to talk, I don't want you to try and railroad me because I'm not here for that today. One, you can't. And two, I'm just not in the mood. You know, like I make it like a convenience thing. I don't make it a morality thing. I make it I literally don't have time for this bullshit. I'm happy to have a conversation with you. But if you've got plenty of people on Reddit you can have this conversation with, if you're just out here trying to spit the bit, you know, if you're just trying to do something, I'm not the one. Go find somebody else because I'm bored by that conversation. If you can deflate their sense of peacocking immediately, it's really hard for them to move forward without either having a genuine conversation or just leaving you alone because it's not going to work. You know, when you give them permission to use their insult that they wanted to use, it's no longer fun because it's consensual and they don't like that. Right. They don't like, oh, like, I don't need her permission to roast her. It's like, okay, then do it. And then it doesn't hit as hard because you were both looking forward to it, you know? So that's usually how I handle that. I just ask them right up front because it, as much as people say it's hard to tell the difference, it's like I feel like you've experienced this. You can tell when somebody calls, you can just tell by their tone and their energy, whether or not they're actually there to talk or they're there to just read something or try something. So that's usually what I do. I just ask why they're there. And then I'm like, listen, we're getting into rage bait territory and I'm tired.
Yeah. I just, I guess I've hosted on a number of shows where somebody is like really quick to jump to, oh, you're just a troll, just because the person is like making a really dumb argument or they're being really ridiculous, while not making it plainly obvious, at least to me. But maybe I just can't like determine that they're being like super obvious about, you know, being disingenuous or whatnot. Mm-hmm. But I guess I'm always quick to like give people the benefit of the doubt until they sort of give me a very clear like road sign, like they're holding it up in the air, like, yep, I'm bullshitting kind of thing. I usually give them leeway on that. And so I just didn't know if like it was more beneficial to try to call that out early or like, you know, just give them as much leeway as possible.
Right. And also, you want to make sure that you don't fall into, because everything I'm talking about that the other side does, if we're not careful, we can do too. You don't want to fall into when I don't have an answer for this, I'm just going to call them a troll. Or like when they're spreading so much like information across that I feel like I can't address it all, I'm just going to call them a troll. It's like, no. Take back the control of the situation. I don't use the word troll because a real troll actually loves being called a troll. And I don't want people to be able to like quote me like, oh, Cindy Davis called me a troll. It's like, no, I called you a troglodyte. There's a big difference. You know, I asked you if you wanted to have a conversation. If I feel like somebody is being serious, I'll treat them like they're being serious until the moment where I can pull the whole, now you don't actually believe that, do you? No, you don't believe that. And they'll either be like, oh, well, what I meant to say is, you know, or they'll be like, oh, you're right. Or yeah, I do believe that. And you're like, okay, well, I'm just making sure. Because if you're pulling my leg here, I want to move on to somebody who's not pulling my leg. But if you really want to talk about this, we could talk about this. And then they will either reveal themselves through their behavior to be just a troll, or it'll be somebody who sincerely just didn't understand that the way that they were coming across was a troll. We had somebody who called in to talk Ethan once who was trying to defend slavery. He was trying to defend why slavery was important back in the day, but he was describing indentured servitude. So the person I was talking to him with, I think just automatically assumed right out of the gate he was a troll because he was defending slavery. But I was like, wait. Based on how he was talking, I was like, describe what slavery is. And he described what, and I pointed out, I said, okay, that's indentured servitude. That's a difference. So you and I actually agree on slavery that it doesn't work because you're describing indentured servitude. And he did not know there was a difference between the two. He thought slaves were paid. He literally thought slaves got a wage. And I was like, nope, they sure didn't. And so that conversation ended up going in a much better direction, because what sounded like he was trolling, like, I'm just calling it to defend slavery, which is a crazy take, by the way. I'm not defending the man's take. It's an insane take that you're like, oh, they're talking about slavery, I'm just going to defend it. It's like, what are you? They're not even alive anymore. Who are you defending? Like, these farmers aren't even here. Like, they're not going to pat you on the back. That's when I was able to be like, wait. What you're describing is totally different. And by the end of the conversation, he was like, yeah, you're right. Slavery was bad. I thought they got paid. And it's like, nope, that's actually a whole different thing. Glad to help you know that. And hopefully you'll stop walking around in public telling people that you agree slavery was fine, right? Maybe you spread the word that there's this thing called indentured servitude, which also is bad. Don't get me wrong. That is also a bad take. Indentured servitude is not good. In case there's a sound bite out of this interview that sounds like I'm cool with indentured servitude, I am not. But if you go in just calling people trolls, they're either going to love it and they're going to feed off of it, or they're not going to be a troll. And it sounds like you just don't want to engage with their conversation because you don't have an answer for it. And either way, it just doesn't look good and it doesn't work very well.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I typically, if I normally don't just outright be like, you're a troll, and then hang up on them. I guess I go more of the route, like, you don't believe that, like, kind of similar to how you do it. I mean, typically I'm not interested in talking after that point, and
Right.
so it's kind of like I just wrap it up and move on. Right. But yeah, I totally agree with you on that, which, I mean, I'm the student in this particular conversation, just by the way. So
well, and like, the platform matters too. Like, if you're on, say, a live call-in show where you've only got a certain amount of time, I say say what you got to say, wrap it up. But if you're just having a conversation that doesn't really, if you're just somewhere and you're just having this conversation and the time frame doesn't really matter, there's tactics you can use when you have more time, and there's tactics when you can use when you're trying to get to a point and they're just not going to get to a point. Like, we have callers all the time who aren't trolls, but they just can't get to the point. And I wrap those up, because the last thing I want to do is waste 30 minutes when I can already tell by our exchange, they're just not going to get to the point. That's a good enough reason to wrap it up too. There's never a bad reason to wrap it up. But if it's just because they're a troll, that isn't always necessarily the truth. And it's also not necessarily beneficial to, like, hang up on those people right away before you figure out if that's actually who they are. But in the interest of time, there's never really a bad reason to stop somebody who just isn't getting the point. Or we get callers all the time who have, like we said earlier, have already decided how they feel. They're not here to change their mind. They're not here to have a real conversation. They're here so they can tell their friends, I went on one of those atheist shows and I gave them the what for, about yada, yada, yada. You don't have to waste your time with anybody. Nobody is owed your time. These are just for the times that we all find ourselves in that are inescapable, unavoidable for whatever reason. And these help a lot in just conversation. Like, when I'm having a moment where I can tell I am not understanding what my husband is saying, I will say back to him, I'll be like, I don't understand. Like, so this is what you're saying. And when he's like, no, I'm saying this. And I'm like, oh, I thought you were saying that. That's why I got so mad, because I thought you were saying the other thing. It's good rules for just communicating with other human beings in general. But as we move into this new United States and this new world where everything is just debate and attack and argument, and, like, knowing facts and doing research are so important to maintain our sanity, I feel like it's more important now than ever to know how to be a good communicator and be a good debater, and throw out the idea of winning all the time, and instead spend this time figuring out how to make the most out of this conversation you already don't necessarily get to decide that you're having. How can I make the most out of it? How can I plant a seed of some kind? How can I get them to take something away from this, and also leave when I need to leave? Just peace out when I need to peace out, and feel like I did something, and not feel like for the next 3 hours I'm going to be going, I should have said, God,
no, yeah, I totally understand that, but please continue.
Well, and I know that we're kind of hitting on time, but something I think is also very important is introspection on your own beliefs, because as idiotic and as frustrating as it is to communicate with people on a regular basis who don't know why they think certain things or have really bad reasons for why they think certain things, I encourage people to also take a really hard look at what they think, what they believe, what they, hang their hat on, or maybe it's part of their whole personality. So as much as I teach people how to communicate with people who don't know what they're talking about, I have a couple of ways that you can make sure you know what you're talking about. And it'll also encourage you to want to learn more often. There's nothing I enjoy more than learning something from people I'm talking about. I learn a lot on a daily basis when I'm willing to say, I don't know, I've never heard about that. I don't know what that is. Even if the thing I learn is really dumb, like, oh, I didn't know a lot of people believe this ridiculous thing. I know about it now. Interesting. If you find yourself getting really riled up about something or someone or some thought process or some idea, I always ask people, does it cost you money? Does it cause any direct harm to you, your loved ones, the people you really care about, your neighborhood, your society? Do I have to do it myself? Or does it undo anything that I've worked really hard for or that I've established? If the answer is no, let it go, man. Let it go. Like I tell people, I hate black licorice. I think it's the most disgusting shit I've ever had in my life. Would I ever make it illegal for you to eat black licorice? No. Would I ever, we were talking about drugs earlier. If I found out that you were using meth, I would be disappointed. I would be really upset that you were doing that. I would think that would like, oh man, you're so much smarter than that. But unless you're distributing it, unless you're selling it, unless you're making it, unless you're putting other people in danger, it's not my business. It's not my business. And I use that with the same people that I debate with all the time. And it seems to work. If it's the gays, I stop people and I'm like, do you have to be gay? Oh, you don't. Okay. Is it going to cost you money? Do you have to pay for gay weddings? Oh, you don't. Is a gay person gonna force your son or daughter to marry them? Oh, they're not. Or you don't have to divorce your straight marriage. You don't have to join. Okay. Does it undo your marriage to allow gay people to get married? No. Let it go. It's none of your business. Let it go. And they can't argue that. It's like, why do you care? It doesn't matter what kind of dog I have. As long as my dog isn't attacking your dog, it doesn't matter. Let it go. And when you phrase it like that, and especially about your own thoughts, you're like, I do that when I'm mad all the time. I'm like, does it impact me directly? If it does, I got the right to be mad about it. But if it doesn't cost me anything, if it doesn't hurt my brother or my family or my friends or my loved ones or something I'm passionate about, if it doesn't dismantle anything I've worked for, why am I getting so heated about it? But it also gives weight to the things you do care about. You can answer those questions with why certain political ideology that's coming into power should matter. Because it does cost you money, because it does harm your loved ones. People go, you ain't gay. Why do you care if gays can get married? Because I care about gay people. I have several people in my life that are married in homosexual marriages that are loving, they're kind. I don't want to support somebody who's going to take that away from them. Like, even though I'm not gay and I never will be, and I'm married in a straight marriage, it doesn't matter. This impacts my loved ones. This does cost me money. When legislation comes into play, it does cost you money. Your tax dollars are paying for these things. I do not want to pay for these things. I do not want to pay a politician to sit in Congress and think about all the rules they're going to establish with this law. Let it go. It doesn't matter. This should not be what we're focused on. We should be focused on more important things. It works both ways. It makes people really think about whether or not they need to be concerned about something, and it helps you prove why you should be concerned about something. They should be concerned about how much Donald Trump is golfing because it does cost them money, because it does impact them. It is a financial burden on us every time he takes a golf trip, every time he adds a wing to the White House. You should be concerned because it is your money. The same people who are like, well, I don't want my money going to Ukraine. Great. You want to go into a ballroom in DC that you're never going to get invited to? How's that a better choice? You don't seem to care about that. Well, that's on American soil. Okay. What's that got to do with, it's expensive, right? So you would support a war if it was on Americans. What are you talking about? Like, you see, and how you can break down reasoning, and people really can't argue with that. If their problem is how much money it costs, they should have a problem with that. If their problem is how it impacts them, and it really does, they should have a problem with things that directly impact them. And you can explain to people how things they don't think directly impact them actually do at the end of the day. And that's why you're mad about it. They should be mad about it. Talking to Christians about why they should be afraid of white Christian nationalism is a crazy conversation. But you can explain to them why Christians of all people should be mad about Christian nationalism, because it is an attack on their beliefs, on their system, on their church, and it's disguising itself as a Christian, and they should be mad.
Yeah. So. I kind of did something similar last night on a call with Jasper, because there was a guy that was making a really big deal about pedophiles and pedophilia, and I kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent in that I asked him, well, who did you vote for? And it's like, well, I voted for Trump. Okay, well, he's been held civilly liable for rape. He's also bragged publicly about walking into little girls' changing rooms and watching them change and get naked and everything like that. So and I guess all of that was to lead to. So it doesn't really seem like you care about stopping the pedophiles, because then you wouldn't vote for Trump. Do you think that was like a good rhetorical way of making a point? Or yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
I think asking people what they care about and addressing the points that they care about is the fastest way to make progress. So if you come in and they're like, I don't like pedophiles, and you're like, but the economy, but war, they don't give a shit about that. They told you they care about pedophiles. So when you can say, oh, you care about pedophiles, well, let me tell you this shocking fact that should shock you if what you really care about are the children. You know, if you really are, if pro-life is the reason, because a lot of people will say, well, I didn't vote for him because all this other stuff. I voted for him because of this one point. And you're like, here's how you still voted against that one point that you still care about. Like, I didn't think he was going to deport everybody. I voted for him because pedophiles, or I voted for him because what he said about this. Okay, great. Let's focus on this thing that you care about, and let me break down for you why he got one over on you too. It's not why I'm better than you or why I'm more correct than you. It's why we were both bamboozled because he said this thing and he went against it. It becomes you and them against the problem. And so I do think that's a really good way, if you can kind of boil it down to what they really care about and focus on that one thing. That's really helpful. And another thing that I forgot to mention earlier is, instead of making it your beliefs and my beliefs, when I have a question that I know if it comes from me, it'll be really triggering, I say, what if someone were to say this? Or what if someone were to make the argument this? It's not from me. They're not arguing with me. It is this third party amalgamous they out there that's asking this question. You're much more likely to get them to answer that question when they're not talking to the person who thinks that, even if it is your question. It's always my question.
I just want to I want to caution you, if you're in a conversation with a maggot, they might be a bit allergic to using they.
Just thinking about that when I said it. I was like, not they. Oh my God, not a they, them.
I won't refer to them as they.
Yeah. Yep. And so
anyway, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, no, I think if you can focus on what they're saying, and then you can say, what if I were to tell you that it was reported, that it was factually reported that Donald Trump did this thing? What would you say? That way it's not, well, guess what? I know that you don't know, because that's going to turn somebody off immediately. It's like, but what if I were to tell you that it actually came out bona fide? It's true. I'm not making this up. He did this thing. And then a lot of times they'll say, well, what if Biden did that thing? Or what if Kamala did that thing? And you have the ability to say, lock them up. And they go, what? And you go, that's right. Lock their ass up. If they're a pedophile, if they release those files and every favorite Democrat I've ever heard of and all my favorite singers are on that list, lock them up. They don't know what to say, because suddenly you agree. You agree. Pedophiles deserve to go to jail. Well, what if it's Taylor Swift? Lock her up. Well, what if it's Kamala Harris? Because in their world, they are worshiping him on such a platform that they assume you're worshiping Biden or Kamala or who else as much. It's like, well, what if, frickin', I'm trying to think of somebody, like, what if Mr. Rogers is on that list? Lock his ass up. We agree, pedophiles are bad, lock them up. And people are always shocked when they're like, well, if they could have released the Epstein files and gotten Trump in trouble, why didn't they? That would have been a smoking gun. Because they're on it too. They're on it too. They can't release it because they're on it too. Do you think if they had a smoking gun like that, they wouldn't have released it? They would have. Why didn't they? Because they're on it too. Well, what about Hillary? Lock her up. If she's on there, lock her. People are shocked by that when you're like, but I thought you worshiped this person. Hell no. I just had two options. And they were the least worst one, right? Or whatever. When you prove that you will hold people to a standard, they're shocked by that.
Yeah, I was so in that conversation, the same one, just another example similar to what you're talking about here. The person brought up, well, Biden smells little girls' hair or something like that, and so I was like, okay, well, let's put this into perspective. We've got Trump, who's been civilly held liable for raping E. Jean Carroll, and Biden sniffed somebody's hair. Are those comparable things? And he didn't have a good answer for it. So I feel like that's kind of in the same vein of what you were just talking about.
Yeah. And did Biden later come out on the news and go, yeah, sniffed her hair and I'll do it again. I'll love sniffing little girls' hairs. There's no problem with sniffing. No, he didn't. He was at least embarrassed enough to be quiet about it.
When you're famous enough and you're enough of a politician, they just let you do it.
They let you do anything. One of my favorite trends that ever went around the internet was when Trump was president the first time. Teenage girls would go on TikTok and they would secretly record conversations with their parents. And they would say, hey, do you mind if this guy I've started talking to comes over for dinner? And their parents were like, you're talking to a guy? Like, wait a second, tell us about him. And they're like, well, he's a little bit older and they describe Donald Trump. They're like, he wasn't guilty. These women are lying, but he did have some trouble. If you look him up, like he did have some trouble where liars were claiming that he touched them inappropriately. And the parents are just appalled. They're like, this man is not coming into our house. And they say, oh, but he's fit to run the country. And the parents always go, don't even start with me, Bethany, or whatever, and I had that same argument with relatives. I was like, I would hope that if I came up to you and I told you that a stranger came up to me and said, grab him by the pussy and made that gesture to me, that you would fight them on a parking lot. You would, right? So what's going on? I'm not saying the conversation isn't you have to like Kamala. The conversation is, why the hell would you vote for a sex offender who has lied to every wife he's been married to? And he's going to lie to you too, right? Well, he says he's never heard of Project 2025. Yeah. He also said he'd never heard of Marla Maples, right? He also said he'd never heard of Stormy Daniels, I'm sure, at some point to some wife he was married to. He hasn't heard of a whole lot of things he's really, really into and he's really supportive of. So maybe we shouldn't trust these people who have lied to everyone else in their life. Why are they not going to lie to you? And that's when I do the whole, you're so much smarter than that. You wouldn't let a boyfriend pull this over on you. You wouldn't let a woman you're dating pull this shit on you. Why are you simping, man? Why are you a simp for Trump? I'm shocked as you are that you're doing this, that you're believing this bullshit. You're a smart person. What are you doing? Right? Like, I told somebody, I was like, if you found out that my husband was in more photos with one of the most prolific pedophiles in the United States of America than anyone else, you wouldn't say a word to me about it. You wouldn't be concerned. You wouldn't be like, hey, Sydney, there's all these pictures of your husband with a prolific pedophile. You'd be concerned about me, right? Okay, so we agree. You should be concerned. What's the... And when you frame it that way, people are like, yeah, I guess, but I promise you, we can find somebody who cares just as much about the American economy that is not a rapist. I promise you.
No, so one thought that occurred to me was, I know that we kind of talked about how we shouldn't go into a conversation or even a debate hoping to change that person's mind. In light of what we had just been talking about, do you think that kind of argumentation is more rhetorically powerful for any like audience that could be watching or listening to your discussion as opposed to the person you're directly in discussion with?
So I think it can be both. that person will never ever tell you that you've changed their mind. But I'm willing to bet they will be thinking about that in the future, even if it's thinking about how they're going to respond to that in the future because they hated the way they responded to that the first time. I do think that person will take that with them and think about it in the future and be aware of it and make sure that they either don't put themselves in a position where they have to answer that question anymore, or they'll try their best to have a response to that. And they'll find that it's very difficult to have a response to that isn't, I actually don't care about pedophiles or something. I also think it's very beneficial for an audience to see a conversation like this one going on where nobody's yelling, nobody's calling names, but I'm not backing down from my points either. And I'm not going easy on you either. I'm not going to skip asking you certain questions because you knew me growing up and I don't want to embarrass you. You came on here to talk to me and we're going to talk about it. You're welcome to ask me any question that I ask you. You're welcome to ask me anything. Go as hard on me as you feel like you need to go. And I'm going to do the same for you, because people need to see what it looks like when you have these conversations, and they need to see what it looks like when you make a really good point. And when somebody doesn't know how to digest that point, they need to see the people. Say, for example, you are like a very popular host of one of those red pill podcasts. They need to see that even you can get stumped sometimes. They need to see that happen. And they need to see it in an environment where they can't say, I interrupted you. They can't say, I didn't let you talk. They can't say, I didn't understand you because I repeated back to you what you said and I allowed you the room to correct it. And they need to understand what it sounds like from the other perspective and how bad it sounds when somebody else says it out loud. So I hope that answered your question. I think it can be both. I think that person will take it away with something to think about, even if they're pissed off, even if all they're going to do is try to bolster their argument. You can't make an argument for voting for a pedophile if you truly believe that pedophiles are bad. It's impossible to do unless you're lying to yourself or you're lying about the facts that you're saying, or you're lying about the details you're giving. You cannot, with good and true details, make a good argument against that. But at the same time, people need to see that happening. They need to see what it looks like when somebody very calmly says, okay, we agree. We both care about pedophiles. We both think they're bad. We're on the same team in that regard. Here's what I think. And here's why. If we truly care about pedophiles, you cannot vote for this man or this administration or this law that they're trying to push through or this statement that was made, because the audience knows that's right. They know that's right. They might gaslight themselves. They might try to, again, be mad, shout insults, call you an ugly bitch. I've been a content creator my whole life. There's nothing you could say to me that somebody on the internet hasn't said to me before 1,000 times. But at the end of the day, they're still going to remember what that was like.
Have you had somebody say, I'm going to skull fuck you?
I haven't had that one. Not to my face. Okay. Not to my face. They probably said it behind. So the fun fact to this, once I found a subreddit dedicated to just shitting all over me. And so I joined and I commented and then they deleted it really quick. Cowards.
They deleted the whole subreddit?
The whole subreddit. The cowards. Bring it back. Bring it back. Say it to my face. Yeah, I commented. I was like, oh, this is a new one. And then it was gone. It was like gone off the yeah. Bring it back. You little bitches. Little bitches, say it to my face. Yeah. But and again, if somebody starts insulting you, okay. So, oh no, like Raptorville 3496 thinks I'm a dumb bitch. I'm going to go cry over somebody. I use my real name on the internet. Where are you at? Where are you? Like, I use my real name. You can Google all the dumb shit I've done. Like, I talk about it all the time, all the dumb shit I've done over the years. I've been apologizing for that shit for years because I know it's out there. My worst stand-up set ever is still online, and it wasn't posted by me, and the person who posted it died. I can't take it down, but at least I use my real name, right? Like, you're going to hide behind these screen names and pretend to be this, like, this theoretical genius. Use your real name, man. Let me see your face when you say that shit. Suddenly, you're not so brave anymore. Interesting, right? It made me proud, though. It was a shining moment in my career. I was like, wow, this whole subreddit is dedicated to how I'm a fat bitch. Like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, whenever I get hateful, like insulting comments, like I don't take them seriously. I sort of laugh in their face and I get really sarcastic immediately. I do, before we wrap up today, which we don't have to wrap up immediately or anything, but I do have a couple of questions that are kind of off topic from
Sure.
what we have been talking
Yeah.
about. But I definitely want you to be able to get through like everything that you were hoping
I got through everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the first thing I'll ask, and this is something that actually got asked by a friend of mine in my chat. Which, sorry, at the very beginning of this, Martin Elzen said, "Scared yet?" With the 666 thing. So hail
No,
Satan,
I ain't
but
scared because that doesn't translate to 666 in US dollars. So come at me. I'm still protected by the Lord Jesus Christ and the blood of the Lamb, sir.
So Joel Pearson asked, what does Sydney think of street epistemology? And I'm wondering what you would think about, the use of street epistemological sort of tactics in a debate or in a discussion. Like, do you think that that's pretty worthwhile in getting somebody to like re-examine their beliefs or what? I get that you're being very affirmative, but
I can't hide my face. I'm sorry, Mike. So when I found out there was a name for it, I was shook to the core because I've had these ideas rattling around. I've taught debate for a very long time. And this is just kind of like a combination of all the things I've picked up over the years. But when I found out there was a name for what I was talking about and somebody else agreed, Anthony Magnabosco, wonderful, wonderful guy. I think it's great. I think it's awesome. I was so glad to find out that there was a name for it and there was a community for it. And there was somebody out there. Because like as much as it's a bummer that people pay like a lot more attention to what men have to say, I was glad there was a man out there saying it. I was really glad, because if that's what it takes to get, people to follow it and believe it and understand it and utilize it, more power to him. I'm not out here trying to get followers. I'm not starting my own cult or anything, although I've thought about it because it's, bills are expensive. But if that's what it takes to get people to follow that idea, I think there could be honestly no better champion for that than Anthony Magnabosco. I think he's very talented. If people don't know who that is, I highly recommend you go look up his street epistemology videos. I think he actually maybe coined the term himself. I could be wrong about that. Don't quote me. He didn't tell me that. But I'm pretty sure when I was doing my research to interview him 3 or 4 years ago, I read that somewhere. I could be wrong about that, but I think it's wonderful. I said all that to say I think it's great. I think putting a name and a label to it is awesome. Something, a term you can search to find everything that I'm talking about is really fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess the next question that I have is, do you find that there are certain debate tactics or tools that are very I'm trying to think of another word for negative or detrimental to the conversation or to the debate that you see being used regularly, like now in the either the debates that happen or the call-in shows? I'm just wondering if there are any that you know of.
Yeah, I do think that like red pill podcasts are one of the worst things to ever happen to the true meaning of debate and the true conversational skills that I think are really important for people to develop. Because one of the things, there's terms that trend. You can always tell when a new podcast has popped up with something because the term will trend. For example, right now, men love to tell me that I'm being humbled because they commented on something I had to say. Like, no, because you got humbled. And it's like, because you asked a question in the comments of a video that I posted, I'm humbled, I'm confused. That kind of stuff where they put these blinders on and they're not about learning, they're not about change, they're not about teaching anything. Because like if I believed that stuff and I truly thought it was the real way to live, I would figure out a way to make sure everybody understood me so they would get interested and follow that stuff too, right? Like if I was truly into the bro pill stuff and it was really important to me that I spread the message, I would do a better job than being like, you dumb fat bitch, humbled, humbled. It's like you either don't know the word debate or you don't know what humbled means. I am fine, sir. I promise you. But yeah, I do think that there are also there are bad ways that we in our space can handle these as well. I think the same exact things we don't want our opponent do, you know, the yelling, the name calling, things like that, that can also be very harmful to the cause, I suppose, because so many people think that in order to identify as an atheist, you have to be ready to yell, you have to be ready to be angry, you have to be ready to call people names, you have to be ready to debate 24/7, you're armed, you're ready to go, you're jumping in. That can also be harmful for the cause as well. So there are harms on the side of trying to get people to understand what we're saying, and there are harms on the side of how we as atheist content creators or content creators of any kind try to get people to understand what we're saying and how to communicate what we're saying. We can do a much better job of that as well. It's not just one side. We can make sure that we don't use buzzwords or we don't try to overpower them by naming philosophers we know for a fact they've never heard of, just so we can go, ha ha, idiot, you've never heard of this person. It's like, what's that shit got to do with me? I ain't never seen God. I don't care who wrote a book about it. I ain't never seen it. Like, what's that got to do? I don't care. My uncle wrote a book. It doesn't matter. Like, everybody can write a book. I can go on Amazon and write a book. Doesn't mean anything. I see it. Wow, I got really country there for a second. Sorry. Yeah, I said all that to say, yeah, I do think there are harms, and they're unfortunately powerful given the internet and TikTok and large platforms and like YouTube and things like that. And so we do want to make sure that we're using our platforms as a really positive and powerful tool, as opposed to a weapon to make ourselves feel better because we won that day.
Mm-hmm. I know one thing that people have, I guess, complained about whenever I'm in a particular kind of discussion or debate is I'll notice you can easily tell when somebody starts to gish gallop, right? And so I stop them and I try to get them to take it one thing at a time, and I address things as they come up. Do you think that that is kind of like stalling for a conversation, or is it a good idea to sort of, you know, if you see them just rambling on and on, forming a gish gallop, to stop them and then handle things one at a time?
Yes. So redirect, fishing line. You're like, okay, whoa, hold on. You're going way off base. This was the question. What you're talking about, I'm not afraid to address it. It's not, we don't have time for that today. We're talking about this. If you want to talk about that, we always invite people to call back at a later time. We're like, for today, you posed this question when you called in, and this is what we're talking about. If you want to talk about the second thing, call back next Sunday. We'd love to talk more about that thing. But for right now, we're talking about this, because a lot of times people also think if they can confuse you and like misdirect you and redirect you, that's the same as winning. And it just doesn't benefit anybody. It doesn't benefit your listeners. It doesn't benefit them. It doesn't benefit you. So I always just go, and that's great. And we can talk about that another time. But what we're talking about is this. We're talking about this, and that has nothing to do with it. If you want to talk about that, we can schedule a whole other time. I'm happy to have that conversation with you. And I'll sometimes say, like, everybody who's listening heard me say that. I will talk to you about this in the future if you call back. They all heard me say that. I'm not hiding from this. But you called in about this, and this is what I'm talking to you about right now. And if they do it again, that's when you're like, hey, we can't continue. I'm really trying to focus on your topic that you asked about, and you keep redirecting. I feel like you're not ready to have this conversation today. So for the sake of time, I'm going to have to let you go. But in the future, if you want to talk about that second thing, please call back. I'm not kicking you out. We got to move on, because it's clear that we're not going to be able to come to a resolution today about this topic. And then you just move on.
Okay. And then I guess the final question that I had in mind to wrap up here at the end is one thing that I like to do on occasion whenever I'm interacting with somebody and they say something rather bigoted or rather ridiculous in its own right. I usually like to go to like a reductio ad absurdum and try to demonstrate how absurd their position actually is. Do you, I mean, in your conversations and everything like that, do you think that that's more of a conversation or debate like barrier, or do you think that it helps in the discussion?
I think it helps if I don't tell them it's ridiculous. So for example, one of my TikToks went viral. It's got millions of views right now. I had a conversation with a Christian on a stage at a public event where he asked me, he said, what is ridiculous about my belief system? That was the question we were talking about. And I didn't use that word. He used that word. And I used the example of catfishing and online dating. I said, you know, if you came to me and you said, I met somebody wonderful, I met somebody just really, really great, they're changing my life for the better, and I can't wait for you to also fall in love with this person. Like, you'll meet this person and your life will change. And I'm like, great. When'd you meet them? And they're like, well, we haven't met. And I'm like, okay. When did you talk to him? And they're like, well, we've never talked. And I'm like, okay. Tell me a little bit more about this person. And they're like, well, you know, they make me all these promises about this wonderful life I'm going to live as long as I love them and do what they say. And I'm like, do what they say. What are they saying to do? Well, if I stop this and I stop that and I focus on them and I make everything about them, I'm going to live this beautiful. And the more you hear about what it took to make them fall in love with this person, the more you're like, this is a red flag. They're telling you to change your life. They're telling you how to behave. They've got a rule book. They literally gave you a pamphlet of the rules they want you to follow because that's their ideal partner. You've never heard of them. Like, you've never heard their voice. You've never seen their face. Everybody else who you know who knows them has also never seen them, never met them, but lives by this rule book to a person who says in the afterlife, you're going to get all this stuff, but nobody's ever experienced the afterlife and proven they were telling you the truth. I would be concerned about that person. I would be concerned about, you know, my say uncle falling in love with a 21-year-old in California he's never met, he's never heard of. She's asking him for money now, but it's tithe. She's asking him for money, but it's for a good cause. She really loves him. She writes him the most beautiful, well, actually his friend Matthew, his friend Peter writes her beautiful things from him, but they're from him, right? And we're just supposed to believe. If somebody told you that their online boyfriend needed faith, you'd be concerned. You'd be like, this sounds like a scam. But for whatever reason, if it's faith that brings you all these things in Christ and faith that's going to give you this afterlife, it's just allowed. And so I use examples like that without saying, here's what I think is ridiculous about you. What you're saying is that I say, I think we can both agree that if I came to you and said I had a new boyfriend that I met online and described it in this way, you would be concerned as my friend. So why am I not allowed to be concerned for you as your friend that this is happening to you right in front of my very eyes? And this is happening to millions of people. And the conversation went really well after that because I was able to frame it in a, this is what it sounds like. And he couldn't argue because he knew that was true. So I think there is a right way to present objectives like that without adding insult to those objectives. Let that person come to their own conclusion that, yeah, it sounds a little crazy. It really does. And then if they want to, they can try to describe the difference between your analogy and what they think. And maybe they'll come up with a good difference, a difference you never thought about. They'll be like, well, the difference here is this. It's like, oh, okay. So now I have questions about that. Or they won't be able to come up with why it's different. And you're like, can we agree that that's an accurate comparison? And usually they'll be like, yeah, but it's different than that. It's more than that. So yeah, I think it's beneficial. It's all about the delivery and how you deliver it that I think can cause somebody to plug their ears and not listen, or actually listen and be like, damn, that's a good point.
All right. I thought of one more question to ask you.
Let's do it.
This is something that I've encountered a lot with, doing all the debates and all the call-in shows and everything like that. What do you say to somebody who's like, you know what? You really should have said this in response.
I say,
do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Well, being in comedy also, you get that all the time. Like, well, hey, I'm coming up to you after to fix that joke for you or whatever. Like if it truly, sometimes it's truly helpful. Sometimes it really is. I had a comedian come up to me once and he's like, I hate to be that guy. I know we're not supposed to do this, but I have a punchline that I think will really, really just wreck after that bit. And he was right. And I used it from then on and I was grateful for it. Or people will say, hey, I've noticed during like live streams, you always say, somebody said, you always ask if that made sense when you know that made sense. Why do you always ask if that made sense? And I'm like, you know what? You're right. Why do I ask if that made sense when I'm confident enough to know that I made sense just then? But usually when people start to try and fix how I handled something, I say, you know what? I think you should start a channel. I think you should try it. And then they immediately back down. I'm like, you know what? That's interesting. I'd be interested to see how that works. You should start a live stream channel. And oh, no. And I'm like, oh, bummer, because I really want to see how that would work out. But if you ever want to use that tactic, you should start a channel. And every time they're like, no. And you're like, okay, well then get off my ass. Or they do start a channel and then you're like, hey. But normally it's just like, oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate your feedback. You should try it. And the minute you tell them to try it, they don't want to try it. They're just like, no, that's for you. That's not for me. It's like, oh, so it is hard, isn't it? So it is daunting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I have similar responses, but I think that maybe I'll taper them a little bit in the future, because sometimes it's a little bit more, just in how they communicate what they're trying to communicate. Right. Sometimes is very, I guess, negging is like, I don't know if you know the term. Yeah, negging.
A woman on the internet not knowing what negging is? What?
Well, I mean, I used that word with my therapist the other day, and she didn't know what it was at all.
Right. A lot of people think it's like a bad word. They're like, what are you saying? And I'm like, no, negging, And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, wait, let me explain what that means. Yeah.
All right, Sydney. Well, I so appreciate you coming by, spending a couple of hours talking to me and us, the audience, about, how to have better conversations. And is there anything like maybe that you needed to say, didn't get a chance to say, or anything like that?
I really appreciate being here. I think this is a really fantastic platform that you have, and I really love how engaged your audience is. So thank you for having me. I know we just met briefly in person very recently, but I appreciate you just kind of allowing me to spread this message a little bit further than if I were just to put it on my own channel. And I really appreciate you being open to conversation tactics and topics, and you asked really great questions, and thanks to your audience for engaging, and please start another subreddit about me that's really bad, just so I can feel good about myself, because that was a power moment for me. But yeah, if anybody's curious, if they want to hear more or learn more about it, I'm on all platforms as Sydney Davis Jr., 2 juniors. I do get the emails. So I am not rich enough for an assistant yet. Make me important enough to have one, please, by writing in enough that it's hard to answer all my own emails. But yeah, I'm happy to continue the conversation offline with anybody, or via email or anything like that. I'd love for people to reach out and tell me their thoughts.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have, like, I've already got your channel link down below, but I've been seeing through the comments like your website and everything like that being linked. So I'll make sure to get those linked right after we get done today. I do want to share a little bit in your Reddit experience there, because I Googled, Godless Engineer the other day just to see what was out there and everything, and I actually found a Reddit thread in an academic like a biblical academic like subreddit, right? And they were like, is Godless Engineer a good channel to get like academic like history of Christianity from? And like everybody in the comments was like, no, don't go to YouTube, no. And I'm like, that sounds about right. Because even in my content, I'm like, don't take my word for it. These are the academics that I'm just sort of regurgitating and parroting here. So like, I usually will cite my sources on everything. So even I say that. Even I'm like, no, don't use me. Actually read the academic material is what
right. You research, don't take what I say for face value. Try it, look it up. But I love. It sounds sociopathic, but I love just like looking up what people have to say and reading the comments and stuff. You have to be in a certain mindset in order to do that most of the time. But it's just interesting to see what total strangers say. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes you're like, damn, they really did call me out on something. But most of the time they're just like, nah, whatever, And I just think it's great. I think it's funny that you looked yourself up.
Yeah. Well, I typically sometimes I will, just to see what in the hell is out there, because there could be somebody talking a whole bunch of shit about me, and like I always like seeing people say shit on the internet and they think that like the person's never going to read it. And
yeah,
so,
exactly.
anyways.
I just invite him on your channel and you'll never hear from him again. Just be like,
Yeah.
hey, I would love to talk more about this, what you said on Reddit. I've got a screenshot of it. I would love to talk. And they're like, oh, no, what I actually meant was, and you're like, no, stand behind it. Stand with your full chest. You said it, stand behind it. Dadgummit.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, that's what I've been doing for the ACA. Is like whenever I'm on, I'll use my, my platforms here to be like, hey, you can call in and ask this question. Why don't you go ahead and call in? And I don't think that I've actually gotten anybody to call in yet from doing that. But I'm hoping that somebody one day will be like, hey, you told me to call in, and here I'm calling in to tell you your shit. And I can't wait for that call.
And you know what you do when they do that? When they call in, they're like, yeah, I'm just here to tell you what I said online. You're a bunch of shit. Just go, how's that feel? Feel good? Great. Anything else? Like, you're just like, I bet that felt great to get off your chest. Well, thank you for that. Anything else? No? Okay. Thank you. You heard it. And also when I love using mean comments about myself as reviews, like the dumbest bitch on earth quote, like Tiger Stripe 99. I love doing that. Maybe I need to speak to a therapist about it, but I think it's hilarious.
Now, so one change that I've been meaning to make for the longest time for all the branding on my channel is I want to put a quote from Ray Comfort on my banners, because he made a video about me where I was the evil atheist, right, in the quote unquote movie that he made. And he admitted that apparently one of my videos that was about him almost made him vomit. And so like, I want to put on there, like, he almost made me vomit. And it's like Ray Comfort. And that's like a quote from him about me almost making him vomit. And I'm like, I can't get any higher praise than that. I've made it.
Yes, I love that, because it sounds like it's a fake, like, clickhole quote. And then when people find out it's real, it's even funnier. That's good. That's really good. And the thing, like, I've been trying to do that, but on ACA stuff, all people ever do is talk about that I look like a vampire. Nobody's actually really said anything mean. They've just been like, she looks like a vampire, because like I have like these little pointy teeth. All the comments are about vampires. So on Halloween, I'll like stream as a vampire, but nobody really says anything mean other than how spooky I look. So, so if you want to post something, you have my permission to post something mean in the comments that I can use as promotional.
Oh yeah. All right. Everybody, whoever's watching this in the post, make sure you type try to be mean about Sydney, because that's what she wants. Okay. This is a consenting agreement here.
They're like, I think she's putting her kink on people, and that's not cool.
So, but I mean, Sydney, you don't look sparkly enough. I mean, do you ever like that could be something funny to do on one of the Talk Heathens or whatnot? Just do some of the sparkly like lotion kind of thing and be like, is she sparkling a little bit more today?
No, I'm not one of the sparkly vampires. I'm one of the Nosferatu, like, bags under my eyes, been around for 10,000 years vampires. Not one of the glittery ones, unfortunately. I'm too tired for that. Too tired. I can't go back to high school as a vampire. You can't pay me enough to do that kind of vampirism. But
I don't know if you can tell, but I've got the engineer bags under my eyes.
Yes. Yeah. This is one of the first times I've ever been on camera, and it doesn't look like I'm just freaking dead, like just dying. So I would say use e.l.f. Cosmetics under eye concealer, but they just got canceled, so I guess I shouldn't say that. But there you go.
Oh man.
I
know. Well, anyways, Sydney, it's been so great to just sort of shoot the shit here at the end and everything like that. And I've got some really big plans that I want to talk to you about right after we get off the show here. But I hope everybody will go subscribe to Sydney if you're watching over there on my channel. If you're watching over at Sydney's channel, you're already at the best place that you could be at.
Come subscribe to GE too. Do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Do it. But anyways, y'all definitely hit up Sydney's channel down there in the description, subscribe and everything like that. And Sydney, just one more time, I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Don't forget to stand up, use your voice, and all that kind of good shit. Bye, heathens.
Bye.